She quietly took her seat in 1A, just as the flight attendant's smile froze. "Welcome aboard, Senator Simmons," she whispered. Back at the gate, a frantic voice crackled through the radio. "That woman, she's a U.S. Senator." And in that moment, their laughter died. But what happened next? Even the boldest weren't ready for it. Let's start from the beginning. The terminal buzzed with its usual late-afternoon hum, rolling suitcases, last-minute announcements, passengers pacing near their gates with half-empty coffee cups and frayed nerves. Gate B7 at Dulles International wasn't unusually busy, but it wasn't quiet either. Most of the travelers were well-dressed professionals returning from or heading into important meetings. Business suits, silk scarves, patent leather briefcases. Behind the counter at the first-class boarding area, a trio of airline staff leaned in toward one another, giggling between call-outs. 2 gate agents and 1 off-duty crew member in uniform, tight hair buns, pressed blouses, plastic smiles turned sour once the passengers looked away. Then came her. She walked with an even pace, suitcase in tow, wearing dark jeans, a simple cream blazer over a white blouse, and flat shoes. Her natural hair was pulled into a neat bun, no flashy accessories, no designer tags visible. But she walked like someone used to being listened to. Her name was Valerie Simmons. As she approached the counter, the laughter didn't stop. It got quieter, sharper, like a private joke that just got even better. One of the agents leaned toward the microphone, called out another boarding group, then turned to her, smirking. "Excuse me, ma'am. This line's for first-class passengers only." Valerie didn't flinch. "I know," she said simply, handing over her boarding pass. The smirk widened, almost pitying. The agent took the pass, barely glanced at it. Her name, Simmons V., was printed in sharp black font. Seat 1A. But the agent's face remained unmoved. "Are you sure this isn't a mistake?" she asked, voice dripping with artificial politeness. "I mean, first class is reserved for premium travelers." Valerie looked her in the eye. "I'm quite sure." Another agent, a younger man with overly gelled hair, stepped closer, trying to look helpful but failing. "Did someone upgrade you last minute, ma'am?" "No," Valerie answered evenly. "The seat was purchased in advance." The woman behind the desk chuckled now, unable to contain herself. "Well, okay then, Senator 1A, she muttered under her breath. The group of employees burst into laughter. Not loud, but loud enough for surrounding passengers to hear. Nearby travelers glanced over, uncomfortable. Some looked away, some shook their heads. And Valerie stood still. She didn't raise her voice, didn't argue. She simply let the silence stretch for just a moment longer than was comfortable, long enough to let the laughter die on its own. Her calm only seemed to provoke them more. The male agent leaned over again. "You know, we just don't see many folks like you up in the front." Valerie tilted her head slightly. "Folks like me?" The agent blinked, realizing too late what he had said. But it was out there now, thick in the air, rancid and raw. Before either of them could say another word, Valerie reached out and calmly retrieved her boarding pass from the woman's hand. "I'll board now," she said. "Go ahead," the woman muttered, her tone shifting just enough to show irritation. Valerie turned toward the boarding door without another glance. The walk down the jet bridge was long and quiet, but her mind wasn't. Every step echoed with memory. This wasn't the first time, and probably wouldn't be the last. Behind her, the agents whispered. "She's probably a social media influencer or something," one muttered. "Yeah," another replied. "Or one of those TikTok motivational speakers who think a hashtag equals a resume." But even as they mocked her, the gate's supervisor stood a few yards away, watching everything. His brow furrowed. He didn't say a word, yet. Inside the aircraft, 2 flight attendants were stationed near the first-class cabin entrance. One of them glanced up as Valerie approached and instinctively stepped forward to redirect her. Excuse me, this is... But before she could finish, Valerie handed over the boarding stub. The attendant scanned it automatically, then froze. Seat 1A. Valerie Simmons. The name meant something. The other attendant looked up as her colleague's posture shifted. The smile returned, but this time it wasn't one of casual courtesy. It was the kind that comes from sudden awareness. "Welcome aboard, Senator Simmons," she said, trying to sound composed. Valerie gave a polite nod, said nothing, and walked to her seat. The cabin was nearly empty, just one or two others seated in the back of first class. Valerie placed her leather bag into the overhead bin with practiced care. She sat, pulled out a slim planner from her carry-on, and opened it across her lap. Embossed in gold lettering on the front cover, United States Senate, Committee on Education and Labor. A few rows behind her, a businessman blinked, recognizing the name. He sat up straighter, curious. His gaze drifted toward the front of the plane, toward the woman everyone had just laughed at. Meanwhile, back at gate B7, a low, clipped voice cut into the headsets of the airline staff. "This is TSA Command. I need an incident report on the boarding process for Flight 893. Passenger, Valerie Simmons. Yes, that Valerie Simmons. Senator Simmons. I want everything pulled. Video, audio, staff interactions. Right now." There was a pause. The supervisor at the gate raised his head and began walking toward the desk. "What the hell did you guys just do?" he said under his breath. The laughter was gone. The smirks faded, and a heavy silence settled over gate B7. The aircraft hummed with a low vibration as Valerie Simmons settled into her seat. Row 1A was spacious, pristine, still carrying the cold scent of leather and disinfectant. Around her, the first-class cabin slowly began to fill, executives in navy suits, a mother with a baby in designer clothes, an older white man with cufflinks that probably cost more than her monthly salary, back when she had one. But none of them mattered now. She had a window seat and a pocket of silence. She opened her planner, leafed through briefing notes for an upcoming Senate subcommittee hearing on educational reform, and underlined one statistic. 87% of black students in underserved districts still lacked access to modernized textbooks. A different kind of preparation. One most people around her never imagined a black woman had to do. The flight attendant, Michelle, her name tag read, stood motionless for a moment, still processing what she had just seen on the boarding stub. Her eyes flicked toward Valerie, then toward the forward galley. She took a half-step back as if physically recalibrating her entire demeanor. The other attendant, Janelle, leaned in quietly. "Wait, did she just say senator?" Michelle nodded almost imperceptibly, then whispered, "Go check the manifest. Right now." Janelle disappeared toward the service area, leaving Michelle standing stiff, her palms pressed flat against her skirt. She forced a smile and approached Valerie again, quieter now. "Senator Simmons, would you like a pre-departure beverage? We have fresh orange juice, sparkling water, or..." "Just water, thank you," Valerie replied without looking up. Behind them, the businessman from earlier leaned out of his row to peek again, frowning. He pulled out his phone and started typing Valerie Simmons into Google. Seconds later, his eyes widened. Meanwhile, at the terminal gate, chaos was slowly blooming. The flight supervisor, Anthony Ramirez, had just gotten off a call from TSA's federal liaison. The message was clear and stern. "You have a U.S. senator on board your flight. She has filed no complaint, yet. But the footage and staff interaction logs will be reviewed immediately." He looked at the 3 gate agents, still trying to act casual, but their faces pale. "You made jokes?" Anthony asked, voice low. "She just looked..." One of them started, but stopped mid-sentence. "Like what?" he asked sharply. No one answered, but the meaning lingered. The assumption.
The bias. Anthony closed his eyes for a moment, pinched the bridge of his nose. "Do you even realize who she is?" he said quietly. "You mocked a sitting senator in front of passengers. There are witnesses. There's video." Now their eyes widened. "She didn't say anything," one of them muttered. "She didn't get angry." "No," Anthony said grimly. "She didn't have to. But trust me, this isn't over." Back on the aircraft, Janelle returned with a new stiffness in her posture. "Confirmed," she whispered to Michelle. "She's not just a senator. She's on the Committee for Transportation. Oversight for aviation falls under that." Michelle blinked. "Oh my God." Valerie sipped her water in silence, watching clouds drift by on the tarmac. Her calm presence was beginning to unnerve the entire cabin crew. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't complained. But her presence alone now felt like a glowing beacon, one that exposed everything they'd just assumed. Passengers noticed. Some glanced her way with newfound curiosity. One woman whispered to her husband, who looked over and nodded slowly. The businessman with the phone turned his screen around to show a headline. "Senator Valerie Simmons pushes aviation reform to protect vulnerable communities." He coughed lightly. "Excuse me, Senator," he said, unsure whether to speak. "I just wanted to say, I admire your work." Valerie looked up, surprised. "Thank you." A small, simple moment, but powerful in its contrast. In just 15 minutes, the atmosphere around her had shifted. The same people who might have judged her for walking in dressed like she didn't belong now stared with a mix of shame and awkward respect. Michelle approached again. "Senator, if there's anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable." Valerie closed her planner and finally looked her in the eye. "You can start by treating every passenger with respect, regardless of their title," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "Assuming someone doesn't belong based on how they look isn't just unprofessional, it's dangerous." Michelle nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am. You're absolutely right." The intercom buzzed overhead. "Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff." As the plane pulled back from the gate, Valerie leaned her head against the window and took a slow breath. Her heart was still steady, but the memory of that laughter back at the gate kept repeating in her mind like a skipping record. It wasn't new, but it never got easier. What made it worse wasn't the mockery. It was how casual it had been. Automatic. Practiced. In a world where she had to work 10 times harder to be taken seriously, she'd become used to being questioned, doubted. But there was something different when it came from people in positions of service, people trained to uphold dignity and safety. Something more painful, more intimate. Her phone buzzed softly on silent mode. A text from her chief of staff. "Heard what happened at Dulles. TSA alerted us. Want to file a formal ethics notice?" Valerie stared at the screen for a long moment. "Not yet," she typed. "Let's see how they handle it first." But beneath that measured response, a seed was already taking root. This wasn't just about her. This was about every young black woman who had ever been told she looked lost in a boardroom. Every tired mother who had been asked to move back to coach because someone couldn't believe she belonged in first class. Every girl in a hoodie told to stand aside while someone else walked forward. The plane lifted off the runway, climbing into the clouds. Somewhere behind her, Michelle and Janelle stood quietly in the galley, whispering about what had just happened, and what it might mean for them if things escalated. But Valerie didn't need to escalate anything. She knew the truth. Sometimes, the most powerful statement you can make is your silence, at least at first.